Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we're gonna learn about ARM templates. Most of the cloud teams after moving to the cloud, they have adopted agile deployment methods, and these teams iterate quickly, and they do need to repeatedly deploy their solutions to the cloud and know their infrastructure in a reliable state. As the infrastructure has become part of the iterative process, the division between operations and the development has disappeared at this point of time after moving to the cloud, and these teams needs to manage infrastructure and application code through their unified process. So to meet these all challenges, you need to automate deployments and using the practice of infrastructure as a code. So in a code, you define your infrastructure that needs to be deployed, and the infrastructure code becomes part of your project. Just like application code, you store the infrastructure code in a source repository and version it and properly, and then anybody can use it within your team to run that code so that they can easily deploy that entire solution or the entire similar environment. Like maybe you try to deploy it in a development, later point you wanted to move it to the production, you can deploy as it is with that simple infrastructure as a code. And to implement these kind of infrastructure as a code, Microsoft Azure provides the solutions with the help of ARM templates. So that's where the ARM template comes into the picture, and these ARM templates are purely based on the JSON, that's a JavaScript object notation, that's a file type that defines the infrastructure and the configuration of your project. And the templates that uses the declarative syntaxes, which will let you state what you intend to deploy without having to write the sequence of the programming commands to create it. So in the template, you can specify the resources to deploy and the properties of those resources. Let's have a look on template sections. So every template will have few of the major sections will have. The first one would be the parameters. Parameters will provide the it gives the values. We will provide the values, or it will contain the values that will be useful during the deployment, that will allow the same template to be used with different environments. And there also we will have variables, like just like any other script, you also have the variables which will define the values that can be reused again and again, and those values will be hard coded in your template, and they can be constructed from parameter values basically. And also you can define a user defined function. So these functions basically nothing about when you try or when you write your template expressions that can extend your capabilities of your JSON file. So you can customize your functions that simplify your template jobs. And also you have the resource. So resource which you wanted to deploy, let's say you are trying to deploy a storage account or virtual machine or VNet, we're talking about those resources. And coming back to the output, yes, this output is very similar to any script that you get the output. Similarly, it will return the values of the deployed resources. Let's say you have deployed a virtual machine and you want to get the public IP of that virtual machine. So in the output you can define that, hey, I want the public IP of this virtual machine once you deploy, so please give me that output. You can write that output. So that's the template section side. This is a sample resource specific one. So what happens is when you try to deploy with the templates, it actually converts into a REST API based template. It's gonna convert it, so that would be taken care in the back end, and it actually sends that operation by putting into put values and get values, all that. So let's try to understand the template design. So the templates can be defined as per your entire requirement based. Let's say you want to manage your solution with a single resource. You have a single resource and you have three different templates that can be deployed, maybe deployed as a virtual machine and application services. And also this application service was gonna reference in the backend to your SQL server. You can do these kind of deployments within your templates, but also you can also go for nested based templates. When I say nested based, like you have multiple templates that's gonna actually work as a parent template and then nested VM template and then a virtual machine. So this all becomes as one JSON file and you can deploy it. And similarly, you also have an option for deploying very similar to a individual template can be deployed, like for one for the virtual machine, one for the web, one for the database to be deployed, and these later point can be interlinked. These SQL server can be linked with maybe to work with the application services. You can configure these kind of things, and now we are going to actually have a look on in the upcoming lecture or within this lecture about how to create ourselves these ARM templates or try to use those templates and build some kind of resources within Azure Cloud. For now, we'll try to understand a little bit more about the ARM templates benefits and why we choose them ARM templates. So when it comes to deciding factor between ARM templates or any other infrastructure as a code service, you would definitely go for some kind of advantages for exploring. So the first thing would be the you can declare syntaxes within your ARM template that will allow you to create and deploy entire Azure infrastructure in a declarative method. For example, you can deploy not just the virtual machine, but also you can deploy virtual network infrastructure and storage and other resources that you may be needed for your solution. And you can use the repeatable results, because when we talk about the repeatable you can deploy your infrastructure throughout the deployment life cycle and have confidence on your resources that are getting deployed in a consistent manner. When you try to deploy a virtual machine, it will be a consistent manner that it will be the same size, same region, and same format of the machine name, all that. So it actually gives you a more confidence and a consistency on your infrastructure. If something goes wrong, you can always rebuild with the help of ARM templates. And when it comes to the orchestration, like when you submit it manually, if you see here, when you submit manually, it's going to actually put calls one by one. Let's say you deployed a virtual machine and web app, maybe a storage, maybe a SQL server, maybe some kind of infrastructure for virtual network. All these one by one have to be submitted if you have done a manual method. That is, there's no code based infrastructure. But when it comes to the template based, so you have the code is ready. So what happens is it will submit all the things in one go. So if there is a dependency, it's going to follow that dependency, but otherwise it's going to put all the requirement to be submitted once and at once, so that you get the faster response, and you can parallel deployment would happen and it finishes in a faster than the serial deployments, right? So this we can treat as a serial, this can be a parallel deployment, and you can deploy these things with a simple one line command rather than putting in multiple commands. So now let's talk about the modular files. When you see any of the RM templates, you can actually break the code for your templates into a smaller, and you can reuse those components. Let's say I want to use for the admin username for that my template, I can simply break these things, and for the authentication I can break it, and parameters I can break it. So such things can be easily break, and then you can reuse them, and you can even interlink that later point. So it's so easy, and you can build as a nested one, as a great one template inside within one template. Since we use Azure Resource Manager in the backend, we can deploy any kind of resources within Microsoft Azure Cloud. When it comes to the extensibility, you can use your PowerShell or Bash kind of scripts within your template so that you can reuse them, and these kind of templates becomes as more powerful. And also when it comes to the testing side, you can make sure that your templates follow recommended guidelines by testing it with the ARM template toolkit. That's an ARM TTK, that's called ARM template toolkit TTK, and this is a kit which is available with the PowerShell script, and you can download from a GitHub. And the tool kit will make sure that it's easier. It's basically easier for your deployment and expertise using the template language, but it gives you the recommended guidelines for your testing. And for the preview changes, you can always use what if operation to get changes. What's going to happen if you try to deploy a ARM template. You have an option called what if operation that can be used, so that way you can actually get more confidence on the changes that's going to happen, and you can always preview before it has happened any of the changes. And there is a built-in validation. What does it means is, like, you have a template, and before it actually deploys, it actually validates the template, all the values that has been inside the template. And then if the template really good looking as an infrastructure as a code, then only it will start deploying. Otherwise it doesn't go even the validation process. Apart from this, you can track the deployment process and policy as a code. You can use the policies as your policies and as a code framework to automate your governance process. And also you can deploy by using the blueprints, which is Microsoft Azure blueprints. Those are the infrastructure high level designed blueprints that can be used as a ARM templates. ARM templates also supports continuous deployment and continuous integration as CI and CD supported. And coming back to the exportable code, as we have seen in the previous lectures also, you can actually export the code that you have already deployed. Let's say I have this virtual machine which was already deployed, and if I want to redeploy similar kind of configuration, I can always go for automation and export this template code, or I can simply download this template. It's going to actually download this ARM template as a JSON format, and also you can copy this entire template to your library, and later point you can reuse that template. So you see here I have the downloaded the file, and if I try to open this file, I'll have my JSON file as well as my parameters. So parameters are that need to be defined. You see here within this I have here parameters that needs to be submitted, like machine name to be submitted, and the disk and networking settings, all that. These are the parameters, and the variables, if any of the variables, that also will be downloaded. So I'm gonna actually use these things later point, and I can redeploy this entire template, so that way I can deploy similar configuration of virtual machine. So that way it's gonna help me as an infrastructure as a code. You can try to put it in other way, like if I try to use this VNet, which is currently associated by some other virtual network, so I can use this specific VNet all the time for my entire virtual machines, since I did already mentioned within my code. So in this case the code is nothing but JSON file or your ARM template in other ways. So you will be mentioning here whatever the network card or the VNet name and the subscription name. You see here the subscriptions are already defined here, and the resource group was defined, and the networking and the standard type of your VM size. So I have a consistency of the VM size and the disk name and the disk type and the disk size, all of them. And that's where actually we can use the exportable code. And coming back to the last one, which is the authoring tool, so you can actually author with the help of Visual Studio Code, and you can templates, you can use those templates as the extension, and you will get the IntelliSense of syntax highlighting, all that options. So let's jump into the Azure portal to have a look on quick demo on ARM templates creation. We'll try to create some of the templates, and we try to create some of the resources. And the upcoming lecture, I'm gonna talk about where we have all these ready-made ARM templates are available. Basically it will be available in the GitHub, and you can use those GitHub library or the templates, and you can rebuild those things. So which I'm gonna which I'm gonna explain in the upcoming lecture. But for now, let's try to create our own ARM templates.